Hello, I'm Ersoviak. I'm 30. I've been training for 13 years and a half, and I recently became a pro natural bodybuilder into the WNBF Federation. And in this video, I will give you a great and complete guide for bodybuilding and everything you should know about training, nutrition, recovery, stress management, and digestion. Now, you may be thinking that these things are not necessarily correlated, but actually they all intertwine together. This means that every single time I'm going to speak about something, you have to remember that this topic will be linked to the other. Training influences recovery, training influences your digestion, digestion influences recovery, nutrition influences your digestion, digestion influences your nutrition, and so on and so forth. 80% of your gains come from nailing the basics, and most people skip them chasing the advanced 20%. It's like the Pareto law. Basically, 20% of what you do is going to yield to 80% of your result. And these 20% are just the fundamental, the simple things. While all the other things, the 80% left, will, of course, yield to still 20% of result, but they are not the best in terms of return of investment and in terms of energy, time, money, or even efficiency. You do them because you want to achieve an edge or you really want to maximize and optimize everything. But you actually start by the basics regardless. By the end of this video, you will know everything that is needed to build a solid foundation and finally achieve great results. Let's go. Let's talk about training. Now, there is no great or best program. So it's actually the programs that you can sustain and do consistently. Indeed, in the first pyramid we are going to see, we are going to talk about training. And adherence is the first level of training pyramid, as per Dr. Eric Helms. This means that whatever you're doing, whatever you're trying to achieve, whatever your goal, whatever your context, the program that is the best for you is the program that you can actually do for a long period of time. No plan works if you cannot stick to it. You could have the most scientifically optimized program in the world, but if you skip half your session, you'll get beaten by someone who is doing a mediocre program, but do it religiously. Eric Helms said it the best. The best program is the one you can follow. And Schoenfeld 2010 review on hypertrophy mechanism confirmed that long-term adherence is the single strongest predicator of muscle growth. This means that whatever the split you use, just pick one and stick to it. It can be push-pull leg, it can be upper-lower, it can be full body, it can be bro split, it can be optimized split, it can be torso limb, whatever. Just pick one and stick to it for at least 3 months. And then assess and check if something needs to be addressed or modify or fine-tune, whatever. When you do your training session, they need to be like appointment. Okay, you schedule them and you go to them. There is no last-minute cancellation or switching up your schedule. You go and you do that. Period. Finally, track your workout. You're supposed to improve at something every time. It can be the reps, it can be the weight, it can be the technique, it can be the tempo, it can be the overall feeling of using better a muscle to better do a movement, whatever. Just progress every single time on a little something. And this will add up with days, with weeks, with months, and with years. All right, now you're into the gym, you have your program. What do? We are going to talk about the trifecta of muscle building: intensity, frequency, and volume. In 2017, there is a meta-analysis by Schoenfeld that found out that about 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle per week is the sweet spot for hypertrophy. More will work, but only if you can recover from it. And intensity matters too. You need to train close to failure. RPE 7 to 9 or IR 1 to 3 seems to work the best, and that's where most of the growth happens. Below that, you're leaving gain on the table. And for frequency, training each muscle about 2 times per week beats once a week, and volume is equated. It's about the stimulus distribution. In practical terms, this means that your warm-up does not count as real set. All the sets that are counting for you are the ones that are pretty hard and that you get close to failure at with. This means that also you are not supposed to do that much volume. Sure, volume is a driver of hypertrophy, but so is intensity and so is frequency. And for people that have taken my ebooks, whatever the training speaks that you wanted, you know what I think about these trifecta. You can have 2 that can be pushed quite high, but 1 must remain low, always. This means, for example, that if you want to train with a lot of volume and you want to train with a lot of intensity, you can. But if you do that, frequency needs to stay low. At the same time, if you prefer to have a higher frequency and a higher intensity, You can, but volume will have to stay low. It's like, a music stuff editing panel, right? When you touch something and you raise something, something has to go lower and modified as well. Same thing. Just make sure to have enough volume, train relatively close to failure, and have a frequency of about twice per week per muscle. Keep it simple. Now that all of that is said and done, we are going to talk about how your body adapts to stress and the need for you to progress. This is basic physiology. Muscle grow in response to mechanical tension. If you leave the same weight for the same reps forever, you stop adapting. Progression is the signal of growth. As a practical application, what you need to do is, for example, take a set where you're using a certain weight for 8 reps, for example, and slowly but surely work your way up to 9, 10, 11, and even 12 reps. At that point, most of you, instead of keeping the rep increase, should lower back the reps to 8, but increase little the weight. Most of the time, we recommend 2.5 to 5 kilograms, so 5 to 10 pounds, and start over. This simple application of progressive overload will ensure that you keep adapting and progressing while increasing slowly but surely the mechanical tension. Not too fast for you to hit a wall, but at the same time, not too low for you to just kind of spin your wheel. And at the same time, your muscle will adapt and grow thicker, bigger, stronger. Another thing you can do is to simply also add sets, because increasing the volume temporarily makes you able to burst through plateaus or just allow you to handle more and then lower again the volume to make sure that you have this full capacity, this ability to tank and handle these new loads. Now, there is a common mistake that you cannot do, and that is to chase PR every session. Progression needs to happen over weeks and months, not absolutely every workout. You're not supposed to increase weight every workout. You're not supposed to increase by several reps every workout. Now, we're going to talk about one of the first steps onto the optimization realm, and that is exercise selection. You see, we are not equal. We are all the same. We are all humans, but we are not equals. And some of us have injuries. Some of us have joints that are made literally out of steel, so we are not reacting the same to the exact same exercise. This is where enters biomechanics. So not all exercises are created equal, and the best exercise for one will not be the best exercise for another one. A very good example type for you is the squat. For squat, you have to basically be stocky, which means that you have to have, comparatively speaking to your height, shorter arms, shorter legs, and a longer torso. While someone who is quite longiligne, so short torso and longer limbs, legs and arms, will have more problem to progress on squat on paper. But the most important thing here is the theory to application, because plenty of people that can do squat heavy have a longiligne build, but if you're using squat for bodybuilding, most of the time it's because you want to build your quads, and yet depending of your technique, depending of your joint, depending of how you're doing it or how you're forced to do it, this might be actually an exercise that is going to build more your low back and your glutes. This is my case, for example. I do not respond as good as free weight barbell squat than to machine squat, for example, Smith or V squat or hack squat or pendulum. Even split squats for me are better in terms of growth for the quads than normal squats. And this is where exercise selection needs to be addressed. Because at some point, an exercise that is basic and that is very good will not work the same way for you than for another. Or you're trying to achieve a certain goal in a certain context, and this exercise is not the correct tool. So you have to open your toolbox and choose the correct tool for the job. For you, it might be different than me, or it could be the same, or it can be slightly different. And this is where you need to be quite open-minded, all right? Some people will do weighted chin-up and will build fantastic back and biceps. Some others will need lat pull-down, biceps curl, they will need some variations, they will need to think a bit more. Same way for bench press. Some people will build amazing chest with bench press, some others will just have big delt, flat chest, and shoulder pain. So we all have to, at some point, understand that, we are not forced to do the basics over and over and over again. We can fine-tune and use more tools. As a practical application, you still need to do compounds for efficiency. So squat, deadlift, bench, row, pull-ups, overhead press variation. The key word here is variation. You do not need to do them free weight with a bar. Also, you can use machines for targeted failure and less joint stress. Stuff like leg curls, leg press, cable flies, or rowing machines. And you need to prioritize exercise that let you feel the target muscle working. So, for example, you are trying to build your chest and you're doing a chest press, but you're feeling your triceps on this chest press. Either your form is wrong, or you should switch exercise for something where you're actually sure that it is your chest that is working. Case in point, just do not force exercise that don't fit you or your body. Last but not least, technique and execution. You have your perfect program. You have dialed in your volume, your intensity, and your frequency. You know what exercise you're supposed to do and you are progressing well. But we can go even a step beyond that and add a layer of optimization, but only when the basics are settled. And that is to take care of your form and the intent that you have while you're lifting. So this is a pretty advanced concept, and actually you need to have a few years, in my opinion, of lifting to really be understanding in your flesh what I'm going to say. And that is that you can perform an exercise in very different manners, and yet from the outside it will look almost or basically the same. And that is the intent that you have. As I said, there are a few muscles that could give you struggle to develop or to get stronger or to just even feel working, while others, just like that, you just pick the weight and immediately you feel the muscle. This is where your intent and your technique, your cues will come in to make sure that you're not hurting yourself, that you're targeting the muscles that you actually need and want without using the potentially parasitic muscles that desperately want to do the job. For example, on a bench press, you're trying to build your chest, but your shoulder and triceps are in the way. So in your intent, you will make sure to have cues and setup and things with your technique and your form to feel and use as much as possible your chest muscle while your triceps and your delts stay in the back seat. And this can be applied for any exercise. It can be for rowing, it can be for overhead presses, it can be for leg press, it can be for squat, it can be for any movement. And this is only after you have built this base, after you have all this fundamental down to a T, that you can address that. In practical application, I suggest that you control the eccentric. Something like 2 to 3 seconds down will most likely help you feel better the muscle that you're trying to do. If you can, use full range of motion, but if for any reason you feel better a muscle by cutting a few centimeters off the full arm, do it. And finally, leave your ego at the door. A very controlled bench press with 60 kg will beat a very shaky 100 kg with bouncing bench press. Do not sacrifice the form for the load. If you cannot control the weight, it's too heavy. And remember, we are into muscle building and bodybuilding, not powerlifting. This is a different sport. You have taken care of your training, your progressive overload, your technique, your form, your volume, everything is settled. But if your nutrition is not settled too, and if you're not taking care of what you're putting into your body, your result will be marginal. That's where nutrition comes in. Let's go. You can train like the best pro ever, but if your nutrition is off, you will not build muscle. And it starts out with one thing: eating enough, but not too much. The first level, the first ever step that you have to achieve into this pyramid thing with nutrition is the caloric balance. So before any food choice, any specific thing, all right, you need to eat for your goal. Simply put, the calories are going to be your fuel. If you're trying to bulk, you need to be in a caloric surplus, period. If you need to lose fat or lose weight, you need to be a caloric deficit. And if you just want to more or less maintain this weight and just maybe recomp, lose a little fat, gain a little muscle, you need to be around maintenance, so neutral. Kevin's whole 2015 research on energy balance and body composition is crystal clear. A caloric surplus will drive tissue growth and a deficit will drive tissue loss. You cannot build muscle in a meaningful deficit and you cannot lose fat in a surplus. Thermodynamics apply to your body. Now I know that these days it can be disputed and there are plenty of people telling you you can be in a deficit and gain muscle, you can be into a bulking phase and lose fat. I mean, at some point, you have to realize that thermodynamics apply and that if you're not losing weight, you're most likely into caloric surplus or something is not working as it should be. And if you are into a caloric deficit, you will lose fat, period. That does not mean that you cannot build muscle, but it means that it's way easier for you to do this while bulking than doing it into a caloric deficit. Now, as always, there is one rule that we need to understand, and that is that when you're a beginner, everything works until it doesn't. So if you're watching this video, you are overweight, and you're a beginner, you can definitely lose fat and gain muscle at the same time. But if you're an advanced lifter like me who has been training for more than a decade and that you're trying to lose fat, you might not be able to do this while bulking at the same time. The same way that you cannot really gain a lot of muscle by staying at maintenance with your calories. Because yes, training is the signaling, but if there is no fuel behind, nothing happens. Case in point, if you want to be in surplus, we recommend always to start out with 200 to 400 kilocalories above maintenance, and for the deficit, basically the same, but lower. A common mistake people have is to try and lean bulk with a bare 50 to 100 kilocalories surplus and wonder why they're not growing. That's because that's not a real surplus and it's not meaningful enough. Alright, now that the calories are set, we're going to talk about macronutrients and how you should approach them. Protein will build your muscle, fat will regulate your hormones, and carbs will fuel your performance. In Morton's 2018 meta-analysis, the gold standard is clear. 1.6 to 2.2 gram per kilogram of protein, which maximizes the muscle protein synthesis. Beyond that, the benefits are negligible. For your fat, you should be at least around 1 gram of kilogram per body weight for testosterone and hormone production. The legwork from the 90s showed that dropping below this can likely crashes your hormones. And as for carbs, they're not really essential, but they are the fuel, glycogen stores, and improved training performance. Escobar 2016 review confirms that carbs enhance resistance training volume. Basically, for your protein, it needs to be at around 1 gram per pound or 2.2 gram per kilogram. You can go higher, but except in very specific scenarios, it's not something that you should do. For fat, stay around at bare minimum 1 gram per kilogram of body weight, and you can go much higher than that if needed. And as for carbs, they are just the remaining calories that you need to actually have in your diet, and they are the primary fuel. So there is nothing specific to it, but if you lack carbs, your body are going to use your own tissue, fat and protein, to convert it into glucose and thus create carbs. We could also talk about fibers and ethanols that are technically macronutrients, but there is nothing more important really into ethanol. It's basically empty calories, there is nothing of value into it, and for fibers, we're going to talk about them a little later. Also, do not obsess over perfect macro ratio. As long as you have your protein and fat its minimum, your carbs can be and will be flexible. Alright, you have your caloric numbers, you have your macro set. Now we're going to talk about micronutrients. So, vitamin, minerals, and trace element. By themselves, they're not going to build muscle, but they are extremely key for your health and how your body will function, your metabolism as a whole. Micronutrient deficiencies such as vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, and iron can impair strength, recovery, and immune function. You can eat enough protein and calories, but if you're deficient in key micros, your adaptations will suffer. So as practical application, you need to eat a variety of whole food, vegetable, fruits, and grains. Consider a multivitamin as an insurance, not really a replacement. And if you need to check some stuff, get a blood work done and check for deficiencies, especially vitamin D and magnesium that are very, very common. A common mistake that people can have is to ignore vegetable because they are not something that can be easily tasty. Many people still hate vegetable because they do not really take the time to cook them, and also because there is no protein inside. So it's like, oh, it's fine. No, it's not fine. Vegetables have water, they have micros, and they have fibers. And these three things are extremely key for your health, and you cannot be a good bodybuilder if you're not in good health. Period. Now we are entering the realm of optimization, okay? Basically speaking, we are going to talk about now the timing, which is the cherry on top. You have your calories, you have your micro, you have your macros. Now, the timing can be very important if everything is set out properly. Basically, it is very important for you to train to have result. And something that can maximize this result is by optimizing the nutrition around the training. For sedentary people, we say that you are supposed to eat a lot in the morning, a little less in the lunch, and barely at dinner. When you're training, the most key moment of your day will be around your training. So the meal before and the meal after. For the meal before, you need to have ample protein and digestible carbs, not much fat, except if it's like 2 hours prior your training, and everything after your workout, you can basically go ham on it, especially again, protein and carbs. That is because around the training, this will be the key critical moment for you to have everything needed to ensure that you have proper performance and that you have a maximization of all the effort you put into the gym. So as practical application, a review of Aragon and Schoenfeld in 2013 found out that the anabolic window is much wider than what bro science suggests. It's roughly 4 to 6 hours. So as long as you're eating your dinner or your post-workout meal after training in this spot, you will be fine. You can also have an intra-workout drink, meaning that in your training bottle, what you're drinking, you can have simple carbs, such as honey, for example, or maltodextrin or dextrose, and you could have, to mitigate the training fatigue, BCAA or EAA. These are very highly specifics. You do not necessarily need to do it, but it can be quite comfortable. My favorite thing to do is to do honey with salt and lemon juice to basically have carbs and electrolytes directly into my drink. Or you can just drink Monster. It's science-based. The most common mistake that you need to avoid is to actually skip meals, because timing doesn't matter. It does matter, not as much as the total intake, but it helps. And please do not go to a gym fasted. Last but not least, supplement. Now that we are at the top of a pyramid, we can finally talk about supplement. Keyword, supplement. They supplement your diet. They do not replace it. Most of them are quite shallow, but a few of them are worth it. For example, from Cader 2017 position, we know that creatine is the most researched supplement in history, and it simply works. 3 to 5 grams daily increase strength and muscle mass. Caffeine is also a very good performance enhancer as well, as said by Split in 2014. As for whey protein, it's just convenient. There is absolutely nothing magical about it. And so what you need to remember as practical application is to mostly focus creatine monohydrate, 5 grams daily, possibly more. Caffeine before workout is very good if you tolerate it. Whey is just cheap and convenient protein if you need help to target your goal. And another one would be much more health oriented, and that is vitamin D. Frequently deficient, and you can take as low as 2000 units and up to 10k. Finally, you can also try and check for zinc and magnesium. That tends to be also a bit low in some individuals, especially if your diet is not as rich into whole food, for example. But the common mistake you cannot do is to spend literally $200 every month for all the supplements that exist, when your diet is actually low quality and is not even mostly whole food. Before doing any of this, make sure to eat your steaks, make sure to eat your eggs, make sure to eat your rice, your potatoes, etc. in ample amount, and then maybe you worry about the supplementation. You can train and eat perfectly, but if you're only sleeping 5 hours per night, it's not going to go well, because recovery is where adaptation happens. The first level for that, as non-negotiable, is sleep and calories. These two are the foundation. If sleep or calories are off, nothing else will work. Not the periodization, not the mobility work, not the supplement. Nothing. In a 2000 research study from Van Coulter, they showed that deep sleep drives growth hormone and testosterone release. In 2011, a study found out that just 1 week of 5 hours sleep per night reduced testosterone by 15% in healthy young men. And as for calories, recovery is energy dependent. If you're under eating, your body will prioritize survival over adaptation. Hormone will drop, CNS fatigue will rise, and tendon will weaken. So as practical application, you need to sleep 7 to 9 hours per night, every night. That's it. Caloric intake should be around maintenance and or in bulking. When you're into caloric deficit, except if you're overweight, at some point you will run into recovery issue, especially as you drop lower and lower in body fat. Try to have a pretty dark and cold room, a little colder than the rest of your house. Most of your house should be around 20 degrees Celsius. If your bedroom is around 17, it's perfect. It needs to be pitch black or as black as possible. If it's not possible, you should use a sleep mask. And as for the noise or environment, it should be quite calm, or if needed, use earplugs or a machine or whatever that is doing white noise, such as, for example, a fan or a hair humidificator. You need to treat sleep as luxury. Keep in mind that in a day there is 24 hours and that you're supposed to sleep more or less 8 hours, which means that you will sleep a third of your whole life, which means that the environment regarding sleeping and around your bedroom should be to a T. Alright, we should not be talking about bodybuilding without muscle, and especially muscle recovery. Now we are going to talk about that specifically. This is going to be the recovery that you feel. The soreness, the pump, the fatigue. Muscle need protein, rest, and smart volume management. As for the science, muscle protein synthesis stay elevated for 20 to 48 hours post-training. That's your window to provide amino acid and the rest. Train the cell muscle too soon and you will possibly interrupt the repair process. That's why you need to have a good frequency, a good volume, but training every day with a high volume is not necessarily needed or the best option. As practical application, you need to have, as we said, about 2.2 grams per kilogram of protein spread across 3 to 5 mil. You need to rest 48 hours to 70 hours between sessions for the same muscle, and if for any reason there is a performance drop, that means that you're not recovered. So you need to reduce volume or take an extra rest day. Also, you're not supposed to be sore 24 hours 7. Soreness is an indicator of fatigue, of fascia inflammation, but that does not necessarily mean that you should be training while sore or that you should avoid training while you're sore. But if you have trained a specific muscle and 3 days later you're supposed to train it again and you still feel beat up, you did something kind of off on that first training day. Remember, soreness is not the goal. Adaptation and progression are. As the third level, we have the neural recovery from your CNS, your central nervous system, that is pretty neglected in my opinion. Your muscle might feel fine, but if your sinus is fried, your performance will tank. That's why someday you feel off even when you're not sore. Basically, heavy compound, especially stuff like squat, deadlift, loaded carries, they will tax the central nervous system. And this fatigue will manifest with brain fog, motivation loss, strength drop, and even when the muscles themselves are recovered. As practical application, you need to do a few simple things. First, limit true failure on big compound. You should not be training to failure regardless, but if you really like to do it, save it for machines and isolation stuff. You're supposed to rotate neural heavy exercise, such as, for example, heavy squats, with more neural light exercise. For example, leg press, machine stuff, leg extension. Your carb training will help fuel your CNS. Remember that your brain is running on glucose.
Tom, you need carbs! Your brain runs on glucose!
The most primary fuel, and ATP. If you have not enough glucose, or if you do not have enough carbs, if you prefer, into your day, your nervous system will be taxed. There is no way it can tank as usual. You need to also limit the caffeine abuse, because too much of it will flood your CNS and also produce bad sleep. That is because you do not have enough or poorly managed fatigue signs. Remember to be sustainable into your training. You shouldn't be training to failure on every set of every exercise, and you should do what is needed to adapt into progress, not beat yourself up to the ground. Now we are going to speak about your hormonal or endocrine recovery. Your hormonal state dictates how well you respond to training. If, for example, you have chronic stress and poor sleep, you will destroy your testosterone and spike your cortisol. Cortisol itself is catabolic. It will break down tissue and mobilize it for energy. It is good for training, but if it is chronically elevated, you will run into overtraining, undereating, poor sleep, and all of that will lead to muscle loss, stagnation, possible fat gain, and of course, impaired recovery. As practical application, here are a few tips. First, manage stress. Okay, just chill, go outside, touch grass. Make sure to sometime disconnect and take a chill pill, basically. You need to also support your testosterone naturally. So enough calories, enough fats, enough sleep, moderate training volume. You need to hydrate properly and have enough electrolytes. 2 to 4 liters of water with enough sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Also, make sure to have a stable blood sugar. Avoid huge spikes, that way you will not have huge crashes. A very common mistake that people can do with that is to ignore the life stress. Sure, you're training and you have the stress of the training and the program and the heavy training, but you also have your life stress, your personal life, your professional life, your daily life, stuff that can be just, little things, that can be a little annoying. But soon this annoying thing can become upsetting, and then these upsetting things can become stuff that literally tilt you. And that is something that you need to learn to manage and control, and if possible, cut out. You will not outtrain a 60-hour work week with 5 hours of sleep. Keep that in mind. We covered the muscle, we covered the CNS, and we covered the hormones. Now we're going to talk about the joints. Now, joint recovery is quite tricky because it is much lower than muscle and CNS recovery. And at the same time, it is of course extremely key, because if your joints are absolutely destroyed, you are not able to train properly, you are not able to go heavy, you are not able to do anything without pain or discomfort and possible injury risk. For what muscle take in days in recovery, tendons and cartilage can take up weeks, if not months. So you need to absolutely make sure to take care of them. Tendons have poor blood flow, so they will heal very slowly, and collagen synthesis require time, vitamin C, and mechanical load. So ignoring tendon health can lead to chronic pain and forced time off. As practical application, you need to have smart exercise selection. If you need to go to failure or very close to failure, do it with machines. Free weight for more control overload. You can work onto your tendon, slow eccentric, isometric holds, and tempo control. As for load management, 8 out of 10 pain rules, and if pain spikes during a movement, you need to modify it immediately. Whatever, if it is the grip width, the grip itself, or the setup, something must change. You're not supposed to be hurting while doing an exercise. And supplements that can help you will be collagen, vitamin C, glycine, curcumin, anything that is anti-inflammatory and that is also helping with the tendon synthesis itself. So also glucosamine and chondroitin. A very common mistake is to push through joint pain. Pain is a signal. You should listen to it. Trust me. Now we are going to go into the overlap or the over-optimization of things for people that really want to have the absolute edges, but it's really like minute detail. The first thing is to do sauna. Sauna improves circulation and may support tendon health. Cold exposure as well can reduce inflammation, but will also blunt hypertrophy if you do it after your training, as per this study. Massage, however, are very nice to have, even if not a must-have. You can also do massage either weekly or monthly, depending on what you need, to really relax, shift into your parasympathetic mode, and boost your recovery via better circulation and releasing tension, muscle knot, and fascia adherences. You can also rely on recovery tools such as a massage gun or other things like foam roller, but these things will never replace sleep and calories. These tools are just the cherry on top. Keep that in mind. Alright, you're training, eating and sleeping well, but your life is absolute chaos. 60+ hour work week, relationship stress, financial anxiety, your body will not adapt. Let's zoom out to the stress management pyramid. You can do everything right into the bedroom, the gym, and the kitchen. If it's not going right here, this is not going to go well. The first thing you need to master is sleep. Yeah, again, sleep. Sleep is a master variable. It will appear in every pyramid because it affects everything. Your training, your recovery, your digestion, your hormones, and even your mental health. In Walker's 2017 book, Why We Sleep, there is a summarization of decades of research. Sleep deprivation increases cortisol, which decreases testosterone, which impairs glucose metabolism, and it will wreck decision making. It is the single most powerful stress management tool. As practical application, as you already saw, 7 to 9 hours per week. You need to have a wind-down routine, for example, no screen 1 hour before bed, and you should have morning light exposure to reset circadian rhythm. And a very common mistake is to sacrifice sleep for productivity. You're not more productive, you're just more wired. As an entrepreneur myself, I need to work a lot, and most of the time I can end up working quite late. And it can very easily throw off my sleep schedule. But the main thing is to first know why you're doing this, and also understand that it's not supposed to be normal or iffy. It is to be possibly for a little period, a few days, for example, let's say a few weeks, okay? But then this is not supposed to become your normal. After a while, you're supposed to, yet again, have this time to work and this time to rest. All right? You're not a slave, or you're not supposed to be a slave. The level 2 should be the psychological stress and the cortisol itself management. So chronic stress keeps cortisol elevated, which will break down muscle, store fat, kill recovery, increase inflammation. Acute stress is fine. Chronic stress is destructive, which means that elevating cortisol when you're training is good, but having it too much will yet again wreck your hormones, impair your immune function, and increase inflammation. So as daily practical application, you should have stress management strategies, such as walking, journaling, or meditation. Something else is to track your HRV, which is something that you can do with like a Oura Ring, for example, or a connected smartwatch. If you have low HRV, you have a high stress and you should rest or deload. And if you have a high HRV, you're good. Then into the realm of supplementation or adaptogen if needed, you have ashwagandha and rhodiola. You also have vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, and yet again, it is the same basics as you have seen. A very common mistake is to also ignore mental health, all right? If you need to talk and if you need to see someone to get help, do it. When you're sick, you go to the doctor. Well, if you're sick in the head, for lack of a better word, you go to the head doctor. You shouldn't be ashamed of that. And most of the time, it's just about perspective. Just talking it out, and having someone else's point of view can definitely help. What is sure is that you will not be able to out-train or outwork chronic anxiety. After all of that said and done, you need to have more lifestyle balance and choices. Your environment will shape your hormones. Sunlight, caffeine timing, digital hygiene all matter. Morning sunlight exposure will increase cortisol at the right time in the morning and will suppress it at night. Late caffeine can disrupt your sleep. Blue light before bed can suppress melatonin production. So, as practical application, you should have your morning sunlight. 10 to 15 minutes within 1 hour of waking. If you have problem to sleep, you should have a caffeine cutoff at 2 p.m. latest, which means that in the afternoon or the evening, you're not going to consume anything with caffeine. And as for the screen cutoff, 1 hour before bed, or you can use blue light blockers, glasses, or filters on your screen. And if this does not work, increase that to 2 hours before bed or even 3 hours before bed. A very common mistake is to scroll on Instagram at 11 p.m. and then wondering why you're still scrolling at 2 a.m. Alright, you're going to a gym, you're eating good, you're trying to take care of your sleep and the sleep duration. Now there is also stuff that you can do outside of the gym without necessarily being at work. Movement outside the gym can improve blood flow, will lower your stress and balance your nervous system. Stuff like low intensity steady state activity, so least cardio, such as walking or swimming or cycling, will activate the parasympathetic nervous system, basically your rest and digest mode. In Dupuis 2018 review, we found out that active recovery strategy will improve performance and reduce fatigue. So something as simple as a daily walk of 20 up to 60 minutes per day, outdoor if possible, will help. You can also do a little bit of mobility work, such as stretching or yoga. Finally, sauna or cold exposure, as you prefer, can boost and help with circulation and relaxation. A very common mistake people can do is to think that they are athletes because they do go to the gym a few hours per week. But if you're sitting all day, strictly speaking, you're still sedentary. So you need to go to the gym, yes, but you also need to actually be moving and active during the day. That's where having a dog comes in handy, because you have to walk the dog outside. You can also do activities with friends and loved ones. Be sure to just have a fulfilling lifestyle, basically. As we said, there are a few things with supplements that can help, and that is, yet again, the cherry on top, not the absolute stuff that you have to do. So we are going to see that, and there are a few options that are also into the biohacking realm of things that could interest you. The first thing should be to take ashwagandha, as it reduces cortisol as seen in this study. Magnesium will also help support the sleep and the nervous system function, and rhodiola will improve resilience to stress. You can also be taking glycine 3 to 15 grams before bed for sleep quality and also boosting the GABA. Taurine also could help 2 to 5 grams before bed, and you could also be using red light therapy into the morning or into the night to basically unwind and shift your body into rest mode, and also to balance out all the blue light exposure that you had. But you should not be relying on supplement while ignoring your sleep, your stress, or your lifestyle choices. You can hit 200 grams of protein, but if you're not digesting them properly, it's not going to do anything. And if your gut cannot break it down and absorb it, you're just making expensive toilet water. As a first level, the mechanic of your digestion starts into the mouth, not your stomach. Chewing activates enzyme, and this enzyme will slowly but surely signal your parasympathetic nervous system to work. Basically, your rest and digest mode is controlled by your vagus nerve. If you're stressed while eating, your digestion will shut down. Leblanc 2017 review confirmed that poor chewing and rushed eating will impair your nutrient breakdown. So as practical application, you need to really make sure that you're actually chewing good your food. Try to chew 20 times plus before swallowing. Second thing should be to be present into the moment while you're eating, appreciating your meal. So no screen time while you're eating. And finally, deep breathing before meals, which will activate your parasympathetic mode. Basically, relax before eating. A very common mistake many people do is trying to eat and swallow everything into 5 minutes while scrolling on Instagram. That is a recipe for bloating and uneasiness while eating. Then we have to move on to the food quality and choices. Yogurts were not supposed to eat onto processed and extremely artificial food. The cleaner your input, your cleaner your output. The Sonnenberg, The Good Gut, explained how refined food and seed oils can damage the gut lining and microbiome. In Zinoker 2018 review, linked the Western diet to gut dysbiosis and inflammation. Basically, prioritize whole food, lean protein, whole carbs, natural fat. Try to include fermented food such as yogurt or kefir, kimchi or sauerkraut. Make sure to have fibers, vegetable, fruits, whole grains, bread, sourdough bread, stuff like that will help your gut clearance and making sure to feed bacteria what they actually need. And finally, limit ultra-processed food and seed oil. A very common mistake is to eat clean but with zero fibers. That is a recipe for disaster because fibers will feed your gut bacteria. And if these bacteria do not have enough fibers, they can either turn pretty harmful to you or lead room for other bacteria that will definitely be harmful. This is where gut integrity comes in. Most digestion problems are not really into the stomach. They are actually into the small intestine and the liver. Leaky gut equals inflammation, brain fog, acne, and hormonal issues. In 2008, Canny research showed that endotoxin have bad bacteria and that will lead to leaking into the bloodstream, which will trigger in systematic inflammation. So a healthy gut lining equals a strong immune system and efficient nutrients absorption. As practical application, you need to actually help your liver do its job, but also detox. Stuff like cruciferous vegetable will help, but also good sleep, yet again, and a few supplements like lysine or taurine. Coffee can also help a little bit, but that depends. It seems to be some kind of dose or genetic component to that. But hot lemon water can also help, not to lose fat, but just to help your liver flush out some stuff. Also, make sure to stay hydrated. You need to also support bile flow. As we said earlier, taurine, glycine, lemon water will help. And finally, a healthy gut lining will come with L-glutamine, bone broth, collagen, and just a healthy amount of food without too much insoluble fibers that can be quite irritating if you eat them too much. So make sure to lay out onto the whole grain food and stuff that are extremely high into insoluble fibers, such as oats, for example, or brown rice, or even legumes. It's not that they are bad, it's just that if you eat too much of them, they can be quite harmful for you. After all of that is said and done, we have to talk about trigger management, because there are a few specific stuff that can trigger this inflammation and other responses that you do not really like. When your gut are compromised, even healthy food can become a problem. It's about identifying your personal tolerance. Gibson 2010 research on FODMAP showed that certain carbs ferment into the gut and that will cause bloating and pain in sensitive individuals. Histamine intolerance can also trigger headaches, skin issue, and fatigue. So as practical application, you can have an elimination protocol. Remove any suspect food for 2 to 3 weeks and then reintroduce them one by one to see how it is going. You can also temporarily have a low FODMAP diet with veggies such as spinach, zucchini, and carrot. But also be mindful because spinach, for example, are extremely high into oxalate, and some people can have a very sensitive response to oxalate. As for fermented food, you need to be cautious with them because any histamine sensitive person may have some reaction to them. The same way with red meat or cheese, for example. The common mistake is to eliminate food forever without actually retesting the tolerance. You do not need to have a very restricted diet. You just need to have ample of everything. And if something is hurting you, cut it out, but make sure to retry sometime after if your guts are getting better. That is also why you need to have a pretty holistic point of view. Okay, it's not necessarily just the gluten, it's not necessarily the lactose, it's not the fibers, maybe just the three at the same time. And also your environment is playing with you. When it's spring or fall, there is much more pollen into the air. You have a higher load of histamine. So if at the same time you're eating a shit ton of meat, you're eating a shit ton of cheese, you're drinking a lot of caffeine, a lot of coffee, this can add up to a point where there is this trigger happening. But that does not necessarily mean that for the whole year, every year, you should avoid red meat and cheese and coffee. All right? Finally, we're going to talk about optimization. So the gut and the brain are acting like a network. Actually, for many scientists, the guts are literally a second brain because there is so much connection between them. It's literally the same. Also, more than 95% of all the serotonin that you produce is produced into the gut. And serotonin is a key neurotransmitter into the balance with others such as dopamine, for example, or oxytocin. Meyer's mind-gut connection explains the gut-brain axis. Stress will directly impair digestion via the vagus nerve. And Karabotti 2015 review confirms there is a bidirectional communication between the guts and the brain. That means that the gut will influence the brain and the brain will influence your guts. As practical application, you need to do a few simple steps to make sure to always be chill and relaxed for your digestive system. One simple thing is to simply walk a bit after your meal. It will improve glucose clearance and digestion. Make sure to breathe properly or to meditate before eating. If you're eating in a stressed state, it's not going to be okay. Occasional fasting, if related, can give guts a rest and enhance autophagy. Autophagy is basically when your body is literally eating itself, but most of the time it's just actually replacing or recycling damaged or old cells into new ones. So it's not that bad, it's not that good, it needs to be quite controlled, and fasting can literally help you with it. For example, 16-8 intermittent fasting type, where you're just keeping basically one meal, is ample enough when done for a few days or a few weeks to do that, just by letting your gut rest a little longer. Alright, we have covered the 5 pyramids as I told you. And if you need a little master review of all of that and everything that you need to prioritize, here it is. First thing first, sleep. Really, really important. Really manage your sleep. Really take it seriously, please. Second, your caloric intake. Not the specific food that you're eating, but the calorie thing as a whole. You need to eat ample enough for you, whatever the goal is, and you need to make sure that it's actually something that you're respecting every day. It's about consistency yet again. Speaking of consistency, we can talk about the training. The best training for you is the ones you can do consistently, not the sexy stuff you can see online, not the sexy new secret method whatever influencer told you about, just the training programs that you enjoy and can do for a long period of time while adapting slowly but surely across the weeks and months that you're doing it. Also make sure to eat your protein goal. That is actually one of the key things here as a bodybuilder or someone that is trying to build muscle. Then as a second tier, what we can talk about would be the intensity, and with enough ample volume, the 10-20 hard sets per week, the stress management things with cortisol control, the parasympathetic activation that will affect everything, your recovery, your hormones, your immune function. This is key for you. This is key for your quality of life. This is key for the results that you're trying to achieve. This is key for also how you perceive and live your life. You should not be stressed and afraid or cranky all the time. And finally, for the optimizer that really want to refine a few stuff, we can talk about the food quality. So you need to make sure to have your whole food. You need to make sure that you have good quality food, organic, grass-fed, local, stuff like that. And you also need to maybe take a few supplements, vitamin D, magnesium, joint support, glycine, stuff like that. That will help with your sleep, your digestion, but also your recovery as a whole. As a last thing I want to say, if you are struggling with a result, you start at the bottom. You check the basics and the fundamental, and then you work your way up. As a beginner, you should only concern yourself with the basic, with the base of the pyramids. As an intermediate, tier 2, tier 3, even tier 4 could be very interesting for you, especially if you're struggling because of the whole balance between your life and your gym result. And finally, as someone who is advanced or someone that really want to maximize absolutely everything, such as a pro athlete, for example, or someone that is extremely serious about his lifting career, then yeah, you need to also do this tier 5 of absolutely having everything put on your side to grind out this last little percent that will make the difference between you and maybe another athlete that will be competing against whatever the sport. So that is my goal for you for bodybuilding, and I hope you enjoy this video. If you need more help with that, you can also contact me for my coaching. And if you enjoy the video, please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you very soon for another video. And into the comments if you have anything to say. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.